So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Trace Conversations. I am so excited. Miss Molly Martin, y'all. So Molly Martin, you're amazing. And I want to preface this in a couple different ways. Like had a blind introduction. We had like a blind first date. You are so inspiring. And I'm going to get to your whole list. But I love when you look, because of course I like to look people up right before so I don't sound like a complete idiot and like fangirl. But you're amazing. So when it literally on the website says your expertise, it is economic equity, racial equity, and narrative change. And that like fills my heart with so much. It's amazing. So let's talk about what you do. You are director and senior fellow at New America, which I want you to explain to people what that is because it's so cool. Before that, you were 10 years at the Lumina Foundation, which most of us listen to NPR and, well, everything is sponsored by the Lumina Foundation. They do such great change in the world. You are a board member at Big Car Collaborative here in town, national or council member Nation Swell, policy advisory committee for the W.E. Upjohn Institute for Employment Research. Again, your expertise is amazing. And so thanks so much for taking the time to have coffee with me this morning and all of us. So what would you explain what you do and tie that into what is New America?
Well, thank you for having me, Jillian. First and foremost, I was really excited to be asked. I'm so flattered. And what a lovely introduction. I feel like I've been oversold. But I will start with what is New America. So New America is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. It's based in Washington, D.C., but I live and work in Indianapolis. And I focus on the Midwest, on what some folks call the Rust Belt, and then on smaller communities and second cities across the country. And New America, like any think tank, has one goal, and that's to make sure that the people who are making policy decisions for us, whether that's at the metro level, the state level, or the federal level, have an idea of what's actually going on out here, quote, end quote. Yeah. What's going on in different communities. We do expert research. We do human-centered design, we do policy analysis. My own skill set and my own work tends to focus, as you said, on narrative change. So I tend to focus on telling the stories that we think will help policymakers better understand who they're trying to work with. I won't say serve or work for, even though that's kind of the way that we default, I think, in America. So I came to New America in 2017 with the charge to focus exclusively on Indiana. And I've done quite a bit of work here in the last 3 years. But in the last year or so, I've started to focus on other communities. New America is trying to figure out how we can take a group of kind of ideas and folks who work in the Washington, D.C. Beltway and get them out here, right? Get them outside of the Beltway, because we hope at New America that the solutions are already out here. We don't want to claim or assume that we know the right answer, but I bet some of the people watching this know the right answer, or some folks who live on your block know the right answer. So that's the premise of our work.
Oh, it's so good. Little caveat. I love you said the Beltway. When I moved here from Northern Virginia, I totally called 465 the Beltway. I was like, oh, it's just a big circle.
It's, right?
It's the same thing. Anyway, because you really are, speaking of that narrative change, doing a lot of, you do conversations with the Indianapolis Recorder. You have a great series that you were working on before, and really bringing all of the voices to the table without trying to be the only voice in the room. Like it just so many cool things. And you kind of said, and let's go a little bit deeper on that, but how you kind of got there and why, or at least why you moved over to New America. But how did you, because I know you're from West Virginia, mountaineer. I had a suite mate once from West Virginia when I was in college. Y'all are fun.
We are unforgettable.
Y'all are fun. How did you get from there, right, to Indiana and, through that path, Lumina and to nonprofit work, right? What was that driving force for you?
I would say the number one force in my career has been accidental luck. Really, I can't claim any sort of magical power or special skill. I think I was in the right place at the right time a lot of the time. In terms of why I moved to Indiana from West Virginia, So I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia. It's the capital, but it's still a pretty small place. And I'm fiercely proud of being from West Virginia. And it can be tempting to leave West Virginia. You get a little more excited about it maybe once you leave, although I certainly am extremely proud and would go back and at the drop of a hat for the right opportunity. But I left for a pretty practical reason. I left because at the time, my mother was fighting a terminal illness, and she was very interested in seeing her 3 children start their lives because she knew she was going to miss a lot. And I was 23. I'm marking my 20-year anniversary here in Indianapolis. And I thought, okay, well, I'll leave Charleston and I'll apply for jobs in kind of smaller markets, but bigger than where I'm from, real cities, and not so real that I would go broke. And so I applied to jobs in Cincinnati, in Louisville, in Lexington, in Columbus, Ohio, here in Indianapolis, where I had never been and where I knew no one. And it just so happened that Butler University offered me a job, kind of an academic support job. And I thought, well, hell, I'll go. I had 2 weeks to move here. I didn't know anyone. I hopped on the World Wide Web, because we still called it that then, and found something called roommates.com, and literally just picked my roommate based on her name and age. Her name happened to be Molly, still is. We became very good friends. So it was kind of an accident, but I thought, well, I'll just get out and figure out what happens next. I had gone back to West Virginia originally to help care for my mother in her illness. And I'd gone to school in North Carolina prior to that. And what interested me about Indiana was that I had found through my entire life that I was a progressive person in places that folks don't necessarily think of as, great progressive bastions. And I had managed it so far. I think it's interesting to work and live in a place where it takes a little elbow grease, it takes a little learning, it takes a little patience to understand how you're going to function and thrive there. I think Indiana is a wonderful place. I think Indianapolis is a spectacular city. I do think that it's a pretty purple place. And while New America is absolutely a nonpartisan think tank, taking off that hat and just saying, as Molly, as someone who's got progressive politics, raised by progressive parents, it was always going to be a little bit of a strain, but I like it. And I think once I got here, especially, I thought, well, this has all the amenities and dynamic tension of a larger place. It's affordable, and I might be able to make a difference here. If I go to where there are 500 other people who think exactly like I do, I'm not sure we get much done. And so that's kind of how I got here and why I stayed for 20 years, which I didn't initially expect to do. In terms of how I got the next job, I just took a cue from my father, which was to teach yourself things that no one else was interested in doing. And I went quickly from Butler to IUPUI here in town to run some faculty and staff affairs, and taught myself how to build online balloting systems for their faculty senate elections. Pretty simple project in retrospect. But learning that and learning how to build databases and learning how to think about all the different things that could go wrong and the way that a user might look at that tool got me noticed by someone else, and I got recruited over to Lumina Foundation for a totally different job than the one I ended up doing. I got recruited initially to interview for a job on building databases on how to make grants. I did not end up doing that. I ended up working in about 11 different roles while I was there, and most of them focused on helping all the people at Lumina Foundation, 30 to 50 people at any given time, figure out how they could learn from the grants they were making and learn from the people who were out in the field doing the work. And that gave me kind of an identity, I think, as a learning and culture observer. I won't say expert, because I'm not sure I am. It certainly gave me a lot of experience and exposure to issues of economic inequity. I do work a lot on racial equity, but I have to work on it from my perspective, right? Which is, I'm a white woman, and there's only so far I can take that. And then over the years, a grantee of Lumina's, New America, came to town and said, we want to work in a city that's not DC. Can you help us figure out Indianapolis? And I thought, well, why not me? I had been at Lumina 10 years. I loved it, and I owe it a great debt. But I was really excited to try and build something from a blank canvas.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good. And I'm going to make sure that we link to, because the blog posts and the writings, you just turn out really, really wonderful content that is, again, very thoughtful, again, coming from a progressive lens, but it's incredibly balanced. It's really wonderful. So I want to make sure that everyone has a link to that as well. We'll put that at the end. So COVID, obviously some personal family things have happened, recently, but with work or life or whatever, where have you found, and I've started to bookend these because at first I was like, tell me your bad stuff and then tell me your good stuff. So, bookend for me, where have you found some of that struggle and some of that delight over the past year or so?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we lost my father
Yeah.
about 2 weeks ago, and it was not a surprise, but that's still really trying. Both of my parents are gone, and in both cases, we had the experience of a prolonged goodbye, of a really tough long-term illness or disability that ultimately culminated in being able to die at home, which is
Yeah.
really important and wonderful. So for the last 2 or 3 years, obviously my father's health and the needs and wants, the way he wanted to say goodbye, have been front of mind. Also, my siblings who've been doing a lot of work on it too, especially my younger brother, making sure that they are healthy and happy as we go through this. So the struggle in needing to be very present for them, wanting to be very present in this exciting job where I have this interesting opportunity and where I have to kind of be on my toes. I kind of always have to be watching what conversations are bubbling up around the issues we care about all across the country. It was tiring. And, I'm a mother. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and also wanting to always put her first. No woman especially, but no one out there knows how to do that perfectly. And I'm no different. There are times I let a lot of plates drop. Getting used to that, I think, was part of my struggle. But it also helped me see that I can be valuable, but I am replaceable. And that's actually a really peaceful place to be, to understand that if I walk away, no one's like, oh God, what are we going to do? Unless they're in my own family or my own personal social circle. Those are the folks who need me regardless, right? That's a never drop that plate kind of situation. In terms of other struggles that are shared by everyone watching this, COVID was a very interesting time to work at a think tank. Because maybe that's the only reason you work at a think tank, is for the moment when the country, when the world is in the throes of something and they need different information, different insights, and creative solutions to meet new challenges, as well as the old challenges, which just got louder during COVID. And you mentioned the Indianapolis Recorder earlier. So one of the things we did, one of the tense moments was, well, what is my job if I'm not out talking to people or doing original journalism or helping someone else tell their story? Well, I think my job was to sit on this screen, find good partners, and make sure that we use New America's considerable platform as a microphone for everyone out there who was solving or at least raising important questions about racial and economic equity during COVID. And the Indianapolis Recorder was a really treasured partner in that. What we knew, and what has remained true, unfortunately, is that people tend to only want to ask Black and brown folks about Black and brown things. And that's great. We need to understand the experience of being Black and brown in America. But we also need to hear stories of Black excellence, brown excellence. We also need to hear about everything else. The problem isn't that we need more people to talk about Black and brown issues as much as we do need that. The biggest problem is we are not allowing Black and brown experts and community members and neighbors in to talk about global issues. And that, I think, is the opportunity that COVID exposed in my brain. One of the challenges, though, is New America is a nonprofit. We are raising money like everybody else out there. But for the most part, it is wise, it is appropriate, it is right, it is just on some of these conversations that I should be background. Visible at all. This really isn't always the time or the place for a middle-aged white lady to be holding court. And it was an interesting lesson to say, okay, I don't want to be front and center, and maybe I don't even want to be visible in some of the conversations that we're having about our Black and brown neighbors' experiences of systemic racism and economic racism and economic injustice. But I also have to be able to demonstrate to the people who pay my salary, demonstrate to the folks who might be donors to New America that we are there. And that's a real flip for most
Yeah,
of us
it's
who
balancing.
in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, where, what would you say, right? So last two questions, speaking of what you do and showing up and um, being sometimes that megaphone without being the face, right, of conversation, what would you say for the community for them to show up? And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? What would that mean to New America in any context?
I think what we would at New America, like most, from our community partners, from folks, we've got New Americans kind of scattered across the country. What we would like from the places we live is to trust us a little. And I know that that's hard to do, right? Nobody wants to trust a big kind of
Yeah.
institution, especially one in Washington, D.C., but just trust us as people, as the people at New America that you meet, that we really want to hear what you think, that there really isn't an ulterior motive. I would say most of the time. I'm no saint, none of us
Yeah.
are. So yeah, maybe sometimes I need you to help me understand something, or I need your audience and you need mine, but we're really just showing up to
Yeah.
get the ideas out there because we suspect you have the solution to this persistent social problem. I also would like folks to show up and hold us accountable. And if they see that New America is promoting a conversation or a research
Mhm.
report or policy brief that says, aha, Eureka, we've got the solution, that someone comes and says, listen, we've been using that solution on our block for 40 years. Come see it. Come tell the story. So I'm asking folks to think of me as a source, a place they can take
Yeah.
their ideas, and I can maybe help get their idea a little more shine, a little more research, a little more attention, and hopefully a little more money, because there are some practical limitations to what we can do to solve issues like job readiness, access to cash, childcare on third shift, all these things that we talk about in the work that we do. You are really dedicated to figuring that out. And you know that if I'd come to town and said, Jillian, have I got the solution for you about interface between childcare and your economic progress, you would have said, I have been doing this work for my entire career. Thanks for noticing. So that's what I ask, is that people just keep talking to us so
Yeah.
that we can help amplify what they've already figured out, and just to trust us that we don't assume we have the right answers.
Oh, that's so important to hear. And I hope that people take that with them because that's really wonderful. Let's finish. Da, da, da. So this is you, this is about you, right? This isn't about New America specifically. So this is tailored to you, but Molly, how do you want to leave your trace in this world?
I actually have been thinking about this a little bit lately, and I think the death of a parent does that, but
Yes.
I'm 43. My child is becoming a tween, so she's
Just turned
thinking,
43.
oh, that's right.
Literally Saturday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
And I think about it and I thought, what I want is literally a trace. I
Yeah.
want to know that I've been there, but I don't need everybody to know that I've been there. And if there's one thing that I want to continue doing that I hope I've done an okay job at so far, is I want folks out there, no matter where they live, where they work, what the type of work they do, to feel comfortable contacting me to say, I'm interested in the world you work in. Help me understand it. Help me meet some people. Because my favorite thing in the world is to kind of write a proverbial blank check to a new emerging professional or a mid-career, late in career professional who
Yeah.
wants to come into the social sector and who wants to focus on public problem solving. And I want to be the person who helps them network their way in and understand this really weird world. It's a weird world.
Yeah.
And it can be a black box. I want to make sure it can be really opaque. I want to make sure that I can help make it transparent. I don't need people to say, here is a list of folks that Molly Martin introduced and kind of added to the social sector. I just kind of want to know that I helped.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I'm just so grateful for the work that you do, for the voices that you amplify, for who you listen to, and that, you really encourage our community and beyond to use their voice just a little bit louder. And I'm just really grateful for you and for your time and for New American, all the things. So thank you so much for joining me for coffee.
Thank you so much for having me. And I am equally grateful, Jillian. Keep it up. You do great work.
Thank you.